Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. 14 and 15 we will chant in the section, in section 13, verses 14 and 15. No, actually it's verses, 14 and 15, Anurbrihat Krishasthulaha Gunabhirnirguno Mahan Ityadi Vachanair Bhaktaha Vaishnavastauti Keshavam Shivah Karta Shivo Bhokta Shivah Sarveshwareshwaraha Shiva Atma Shivo Jivaha Shivadanyanna Vidyate. Yeah, so these two we have more or less seen. Is that this is this is the ancient way of filling in the blanks. So first you have when they played fill in the blanks, this is what the devotees, this is what it looked like. First you have all the attributes of all-knowing Tvam, means Sarvanyatvam, Sarvavetritvam, all-knowing, all-might, smaller than the smallest, subtler than the subtlest, bigger than the biggest, grosser than the grossest, all-pervasive, everything. Who? ... And the Vaishnavites fill in Vishnu with a capital V. Right? And whereas, the Shaivites fill in with a capital S, Shiva. But really speaking, what are they doing? They are just devotees. That's the whole thing. So he basically says that, you can just, the whole concept of Ishtadevata is being highlighted very carefully, and subtly he's brought it. The concept of Ishtadevata, being able to love, the whole through certain names and forms, just like, we cannot relate to anything that doesn't have a name and form. When you want to relate to something, it has to have name and form, otherwise it's not, how are you going to relate? To the formless you cannot relate. The formless is you, definitely, but that's not something you can objectify, you cannot relate. So in order to forge a relationship with Bhagavan, you need to facet a name and form that is the locus, as though locus of all names and forms, and that which is beyond everything, and this is what the whole thing is. And this is a very sophisticated understanding of Ishvara, God, in the Hindu tradition, and here this is highlighted beautifully by people, groups of people who are very committed to their version of this of this particular way of looking at Ishvara. And some people say Vishnu reigns, and the other people say, who is this Vishnu? It's useless. It's only Shiva. Yesterday I didn't complete the story of Bhasmasura. That was left pending. And so here the Vishnu Bhaktas can clap hands, jump up and down, and delight in the fact that Shiva came and fell at Vishnu's feet with Bhasmasura in tow. Who is Bhasmasura? Who had recently got the boon that, it's kind of an opposite of King Maidas. Maidas got the boon that everything he touches turns into gold. And here, this fellow got the boon that everything he touches gets reduced to ashes. only Shiva can give the boon because Shiva is all about ashes. Now Shiva himself was ashen, went and caught hold of Lord Vishnu's feet, and then what happened? Lord Vishnu said, don't worry. And then transformed into another beautiful damsel. And of course Bhasmasura forgot that he was after Shiva, and he was completely now committed to the damsel, and then placed before her, it was love at first sight, one-sided of course, and he placed before her an offer of marriage, a marriage proposal, and he said, you must marry me, there is no other choice, it's an offer she could not refuse. So he said, you have to do this, and he was so smitten. And then, she said, well, I come from a clan, from a tribe, we have our own pre-marital rituals. We cannot go against the ancestors and against all the devatas, we have to engage in these rituals. So, he says, oh, whatever, I'm happy to go through all the rituals. And so she goes, she goes like this, and he also goes like this, and she says, oh, now we are paying homage to all the 5 elements, and she goes like that, and he also goes like that, and then she goes like this, and he goes like this, and she goes like that, and he mirrors everything, and finally she goes like this, and he too goes like this, and then he is reduced to ashes, and then, Vishnu just comes out of there, and supposedly Shiva is rescued. These are all stories. So, like this, we have so many stories, and the stories are just for, just to get, to develop this bhakti love, and of course, the people who are Shaivites have their own stories. What is Vishnu? All the time lolling around in this posturpedic mattress, coiled mattress, and of Adishesha, he doesn't do anything, it's Shiva, he's all full of jewelry and everything, he doesn't know V for Vairagya. Vairagya, you have to go to Shiva. Like this, there are so many other stories, and so like this, the whole point is that the devotion is strong because there is a relationship to an entity. So, and you can take it like this also. People who are followers of Allah, even though they don't, they don't have a form, but still they are very committed to that, And same thing, people who are followers of Jesus Christ are very committed to Jesus because even though they say it's formless, there is still name and form or the cross or something like that. They have to relate to. Otherwise, how to relate? You cannot have love which has been described as that the ultimate form of love is devotion. So you cannot have any form of love to something that you cannot relate to. And so here Bhagavan is made relatable. So the Vishnu Bhaktas, are after Vishnu and they describe him in these glorious terms. The Shiva Bhaktas are after Shiva and they describe him in such glorious terms. And to this we can add the Mother Goddess Bhaktas are such worshippers and they describe her in such glorious terms. But then we come to the Ishta Devata of Narahari himself in the next very difficult verse where he competes, I think, in a nice way, with Adi Shankara, and I'll tell you why after we read this verse. So very carefully we have to read this. Kham vayu tejo jalabhu
Kham vayu tejo jalabhu
kshetrajna jnarkendu murtibhihi
kshetrajnarkendu murtibhihi
ashtabhir ashtamurtincha
ashtabhir ashtamurtincha
Shambhavastauti Shankaram.
Shambhavastauti Shankaram.
Yeah, so here, this is very interesting because we had already talked about the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites. There was no need for one more Shiva praise. So we have to conclude that it is not redundant, and he has inserted his own Ishtadevata. And who might that be from reading this?
Shankara.
Shankara, but in the form of Dakshinamurti. Yeah. And how do we come to that conclusion? From that one sentence from the top. Kham vayu tejo jala bhu kshetra gnarkendu murti vihi. Kham means what? Kham, space. Kham is space. And not come, Kham. Kham is space. And vayu is what? Air. Tejaha, fire. Jala. Jalam means what? Water. Bhuhu. What is bhuhu? Yeah, bhu is earth. Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna means the one who is the observer of all this. Correct? All these are kshetras, fields, things, objects. Kshetrajna is the subject who is the observer of all the objects. Correct? Yeah. So now the 5 elements, it's very clear. Kham, vayu, tejo, jala, bhu. Bhuhu means what? The 5 elements. The 5 elements plus kshetrajna. Kshetrajna means who? You are the kshetrajna. As soon as you say kham, you have objectified space. As soon as you say vayu, you have already objectified the air, and so on and so on and so on. So you have objectified the 5 elements. And then, what else? Kshetrajna, the one who is the objectifier, that conscious being, without which there is no Bhagavan, really. And then Arka. Arka means what? Sun. Arka is sun, not S-O-N, S-U-N. Arka. Indu means what? Moon. Yeah, even if you don't know Sanskrit, you can tell, because after sun what comes? Moon. Yeah. So this is how to excel in in-class quizzes. So sun, Arka, Indu, moon, Arka plus Indu, Arkendu. A nice little sandhi going on there. So Arkendu, Murtibhihi, and Arkendu, Murtibhihi. So through these forms, Murtibhihi means through these forms. Third case, Murtibhihi. Through these forms. Which forms? These 8-fold forms. How did you get 8? 5 elements? Plus you, 6. Sun and moon, 8. Correct? So Murtibhihi, through these forms, what is happening through these forms? Ashtabhihi, Ashtamurtincha. Murtibhihi, Ashtabhihi, through these 8 forms. Shambhavaha. Shambhavaha means that you see, the Shambhavaha is the Tadhita form of Shambhu, and Shambhavaha means those belonging to Shambhu, means the devotees of Shambhu, Stauti Shankaram. So the devotees of Shambhu, Shambhavati iti Shambhuhu. So the one whose presence is auspicious. Sham means auspiciousness. Shambhu, the one who is just, all he does is auspicious. Everything that he does is auspicious. So Shambhu, and the people who belong to Shambhu, who are committed to Shambhu, so people of Shambhu, Shambhavaha. So these Shambhavaha, these people who belong to Shambhu, means they are committed devotees of Shambhu, Stauti, actually it's singular, so Shambhavaha. So the devotee of Shiva in this particular Ashtamurti form, so through these forms, invoking Lord Shiva in these forms, including oneself, Stauti Shankaram, worships Lord Shiva, praises Lord Shiva through these forms. This is of course the Vedantins' Ishta Devata. So then Narahari leaves us in no doubt whether he is a Vedantin or not, because he brings in Vaishnava, Vishnu and Shiva, the two common forms worshipped in India at that time, plus he adds in the Vedantins' prayer and the Vedantins' form of devotion, which is what? Soham Bhavena Pujayet, a worship which is happening from the standpoint of including oneself. And so in the 8 forms, the I is included. In other words, I complete the Lord. There is no Lord without the conscious being. And so this is the way the Vedantins pray. So the Vedantin is also a devotee. He is trying to subtly say that there is no Vedanta without devotion. This is a very, very important precept he is giving in this whole section, that knowledge is incumbent upon devotion. In a heart that has been melted by devotion, the knowledge comes and takes place. Otherwise, the heart is not ready. And so why do I say he competes with Adi Shankara? Because from this it is very clear that he has read the Dakshinamurti Ashtakam. Bhurambham Syanalo Nilombaramahar Natho Himamshu Puman Ityabhati Characharatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murti Ashtakam. That particular verse. Bhuhu, Bhuhu means earth. Ambham, sea, waters. Analaha, fire. Anilaha, Bhurambham, Syanalo, Nilombara. Ambara, space. Bhurambham, Syanalo, Nilombara, Mahaha. Nambara, Mahaha. Ambaram, space. Aharnatha. Ahaha means what? A sound that you make when you are satisfied. No. That is ahaha, not ahaha. What is ahaha? Day. Yeah. Ahas. Ahaha means day. So ahaha plus natha. Natha means the Lord of the day. Aharnatha. Who is Aharnatha? Who is the Lord of the day? Sun. Himamshuhu, the cool one. Who is the cool one? Oh. Plus the person who is saying all these things, Puman. Plus the person. You see, there is some very similarity there, correct? So you cannot accuse Narahari of plagiarism because he has changed all the words. And if, Vedanta is nothing but one big copy job, really. Yeah, there's nothing original. We only deal with, copies. We are all copycats. Yeah. Every Vedantin is a copycat. All the way to the Upanishads. And then you think the Upanishads are original, and then you read the Kena Upanishad, and then the student praises the teacher in the Kena Upanishad. Oh, you know so much, and thank you, Dhanyoham, or something the student says. And the teacher says, Yena stadvyacha chakshire, we are only copying what our teachers told us. So the Upanishad also says, we are also copying. So the only thing that's original is you, really. Purana, pura eva navacha. That which is as old as the hills and ever new is you. So really speaking, we thrive on being plagiarists. We really thrive because there's no need, there's no pressure to be original. There's no pressure to say, I founded this particular school. There's no pressure to be a sampradaya krit. Krit means the founder, the doer of what? Of a sampradaya, of a new way of looking at Vedanta. There isn't a new way of looking at Vedanta. There is Vedanta, And then there are teachers, there are teachers of Vedanta who shine, and there are certain other teachers of Vedanta who don't shine as much, but they are in their own way, helping people. And there are certain teachers of Vedanta who are who mark mark the Vedantic, the Jnanambaram, the knowledge, the space of knowledge with they blaze through like a comet, and they mark their spaces. And some are like suns, some are cool like moons, some twinkle like stars. So there may be difference based on upadhis. And some are unsung, like a wildflower blooming in the desert. I mean, who knows, who can even take part in the fragrance, who can appreciate, doesn't matter, but it still has done its job. So that is all there is. There is no Neo-Vedanta. So if you come across a group, says Neo-Vedanta, stay away. We only deal with BC. Yeah, BCE, that's all. We just deal with that. We're not interested in anything new. Anything new is immediately suspect, because it comes with your own subjectivity and the pressure to become original. In fact, you already are as original as possible. Everything is a copycat. So you cannot, everything is a copy. That's all it is. And, brazen copying. You don't even hide from the fact that you are copying. Pujya Swamiji wrote one song about Adi Shankara. And in that, he lifted, one whole line of Totaka's song. No problem. Yeah. No problem at all. Why? Because whatever has been said well, why simply waste time trying to state it? No problem at all, no pressure. And in fact, it was a frequent, practice of attributing everything to Shankaracharya, because from him the knowledge came. So now we have a confused mess of all kinds of writings. Of course, they are clearly not Adi Shankara, but the writer said gave the authorship posthumously to Adi Shankaracharya. We don't deal with new stuff. We are antique dealers. Yeah. We are the antique show. Yes. Everything is BCE, and it's all, it's all old stuff. The older the better, yeah. Pujya Swamiji, part of the reason I feel his lungs were compromised was his habit of going to old bookstores and sitting there for ages. And sifting through the dust. Advaita Makaranda is a gift of many such forays into, the old bookstores, into the small cul-de-sacs of Varanasi. And Tattva Bodha again is the result of another such foray, and Bodhisara also is a result of foraging through all these old bookstores. None of these new bookstores where people just churn out a novel, the airport bookshops, where people churn out a novel every 2-3 months, then they are on some kind of a list. And so, this is all about the original. We don't have any pressure for anything new, because whatever is new is really a restatement. It's a simple anubada of all that there was. So here, he's saluting Adi Shankara and saying, I think I'm going to attempt what you just did over there. And you said, Bhuvrambham Senalombaro Mahar Natho Himamshu Puman, and I'm going to say, Khamva Tejojala Bhuhu Kshetragya Attamurti. I'm also going to attempt the same thing. No problem there. And it's a kind of a nod to Adi Shankara and saying, oh, looks like you set a little trend, and let's see if I can also try that, And so very beautifully done. And you can see his humor there. Managed it. Made it. You can see him chuckling there after he wrote it, and after everything fell, after that, difficult words came into the meter and sat there in place. is having a little dance of jubilation and dedicating that dance to Lord Dakshinamurti. Very nice. And so what's the point of these three verses? And so basically the thing is that you see everything as Bhagavan, and then you can't see everything as Bhagavan unless Bhagavan has a name and form. And so people who are devotees are worshipping Bhagavan through various names and forms. And then he says, idam yada parinatam prema tadjnanamevahi. So he says that, parinatam means transformed. So the transformed love in the form of devotional love. So when that love is transformed into devotion, it is virtually indistinguishable from knowledge. So because what happens is that first there is love of objects, and then there is love of that which is the truth of all objects in the form of Shiva, Vishnu, Dakshinamurti, Goddess, doesn't matter. And that love, is like an ultimate love because you see that source in everything. Like that man who was running around saying, this is Vasudeva, that is Vasudeva, Vasudevakhyam idam jagat. We saw that in the previous class. And how everything is just Vasudeva alone, and or Shiva alone, or Dakshinamurti alone, doesn't matter. So you see Bhagavan in everything. And that is the culmination of devotion. And it is virtually indistinguishable from the culmination of knowledge, because when the knowledge sits, then also you see Ishvara in everything, as everything. So he's doing a very big khandanam, a very sustained and a lengthy critique of these four paths to knowledge. Sociopath, psychopath, what else? Yeah, so he's doing a critique of these paths to knowledge, and he's saying that there is really no path. It's all just one has to know, and the heart has to be torn open, and that is what needs to happen. And however that happens doesn't matter. Atha yukyantaram. Yeah. Now these two verses are dedicated for the quintessential skeptic. The skeptic is going, yeah. Dakshinamurti, Shmakshinamurti, big G. And, Shiva, Piva, Vishnu, Shmishnu. What's all this? I'm not into all that. I'm all into the self. When I went to the Vedanta class, I didn't want to just sit and worship. That's why I chose Vedanta. Because I want to be far away from the temple. If there's a temple anywhere announcing itself, I wanted to go far away and just be with myself and talk about the self. And as long as you talk about Brahman and Atma being Brahman, and Brahman being no different from Atma, and Brahman is Sat, Chit, Ananda, you have me. You have me attending classes regularly. You have me, by the heart. You have, I am engaged. I'm there 100%. But then, that is Swarupa Lakshana. So as long as you talk about Swarupa Lakshana, we can be friends. We can have fun. And this is the Swarupa of the self. It's all Brahman. It's all one. Yes, I am with you. The bird and the trees and everything is all one, and it's nothing but an extension of me. Wonderful. Say more. Come on, What are the Upanishad? What are we going to study next? Great, I'm there. But then you talk about then you talk about another thing. First you say this is not enough. What do you mean this is not enough? Isn't it all, the whole thing, isn't it all about being in the swimming wonders of oneness and swimming all together? We are all together, but we are all one, and we are swimming in the sea of Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Satchidananda, Gu. We are all, we are all indistinguishable from the Satchidananda Gu, and it is also the glue that holds everything together, this Gu, but then this Gu is just an extension of me. In fact, I'm oozing Satchidananda, and I am that self which I have been striving for ages to understand, and this I'm with you, no problem. Say more, when is the next class? But then you say this is not enough. Just to know that you are Brahman and your awareness is not enough. Why? I'm fine with it. No, you're not. How can you tell me I'm not fine with it? No, really you're not. All right, what else is left? Well, what is left is that you have to understand the truth of the Jagat as resting in a conscious being who controls all the laws to which your own body, mind, sense complex is subject to, including the law of karma. What? I didn't even understand that. I didn't even get that. And the more than what, the question is why? Why do I have to understand that? Because don't you say, aren't we Vedantins? Isn't there, we should be allergic to Bhagavan, Shiva or Vishnu, whatever we should be allergic to Bhagavan, we should all just be in the swimmy part of the Vedanta doctrine where everyone is just in the sea of oneness and virtually indistinguishable and everything is just all one. That has a nice little resonance and it's wonderful, and I can get behind that. I can be behind that 110%, no problem. But then needlessly you start talking about this other thing called Tatastha Lakshana. The definition of Brahman from the standpoint of the universe. Why should I be worried about the universe? Because didn't you say that it doesn't even exist and it's all just one? Yes, but then do you remember that the next time you have a mosquito bite? That is my question. The next time you have a mosquito bite or some other, or a karmic bite, because sometimes karma also bites. Yeah. And so then the whole tune starts to change. Because the oneness is wonderful and the swimmy feeling is wonderful as long as I don't have to deal with anything else and anybody else. So the oneness falls apart as soon as there is a fight with a significant other, as soon as there is a fight or a bite, doesn't matter, both are the same. So the oneness falls apart whenever I'm anxious about the child, about the elder in my life, about something that I want and I can't get, about something I have and I want to retain, about something I have and I want to get rid of immediately, yesterday, take it away. That time the oneness falls apart because suddenly I find that it's no longer the swimmy feeling. In fact, the swimmy feeling is mostly gone, and and having taken its place is this feeling of duality, really. This perception of duality, and you can't just call it a perception, is the reality in my life of this duality poking its ugly head from various, places and saying boo, just just coming out and just coming at me, and all these things coming at me, the newly minted Vedantin, the half-baked Vedantin with only Satchidananda precept is left completely without any recourse how to deal with this. Because if everything is one, why don't I get what I want all the time? In fact, most of the time I get what I don't want. Starting with wrinkles, I get what I don't want. When do I get what I want? Never. And so, obviously, from the standpoint of this body-mind-sense complex, the remote control is being operated by someone else. Yeah. In response to which I jump, in response to which I fall. In other words, it's like a puppet show. And so suddenly when I lift my hand, there is some tug that's happening, Yeah, and so it's like It's like that, when in the new days of computer animation, Swamiji had the unenviable task. It's not easy being a Swami, Yeah. And Swamiji had the unenviable task of releasing this DVDs of Ramayana. And then, nothing was working properly. And here was a simulation of Rama going into the forest. And here was a simulation of Lakshmana with his bow and arrow following him. And here was Sita following them both. Like this. And we all, quite a few of us had gone because we were so excited that this is for children and Ramayana, and all of us were laughing. The only one that wasn't laughing was Pujya Swamiji. All of us were laughing to tears of joy when somebody said, because it was so ridiculous. And even one Rakshasa beating another Rakshasa was just like this. So, and then Swamiji was supposed to release this and say a few good words, which just wouldn't come. So, like the animated series, he also took his own time to articulate those words. And then he said something like, it's a good start. There is still a lot of work to be done. It's a good start. So, this is what the whole thing is. So, like that animated series, the badly animated series, our life also seems to be like that. Everyone's life seems to be like that. You get up in the morning all right, and by afternoon there is a catch. There's a catch in the back. How did it come? I just thought I'll do some exercise. And I just lifted my hands and ow! Immediately a catch came in the back. The morning was brilliant and the afternoon was spent nursing this catch. And what about the evening? Don't even ask. Why? Because I forgot that I was allergic to ibuprofen. Because I took the ibuprofen thinking the catch would relax, but I had not taken it in a long time. I forgot that I was allergic, and then the rest of the time, was spent nursing the rashes all over the body and wondering, marking time, whether I should go to the emergency room or not, swallowing periodically to make sure that I could swallow. How was your day? This is basically what happens. And so, it is very clear from the standpoint of this body-mind-sense complex with which this hapless, hopeless jiva tends to be identified, in a very strongly, there seems to be another entity or a series of them that are controlling my life. Control is the word here. Because whatever I want, I don't get. Whatever I work for is eluding me. And then to put salt on the wound and rub it nicely, whatever I want, the neighbor gets right in front of my eyes. Yeah. And enjoys also and, bandies it in front of me. So therefore, there is obviously something else, someone else in charge, and therefore the place of Tatastha Lakshana, or the exposition, the expose of Ishvara, and understanding how you are not separate from that Ishvara, and the separating factor is only ignorance. Subjective factor is ignorance, and the objective, separating factor is an as-though separating factor from the standpoint of the various upadhis. Ishvara is endowed with a upadhi that is, complete and limitless upadhi, limitless powers, limitless everything. And what about this Ishvara here? Oh, Anishvara, not Ishvara. Yeah. Why not Ishvara? Because, limited upadhi, starting with the brain, very limited. Only don't tell me too many things. I get confused. Only few things. Yeah, starting with grammar rules. And just one rule a year. That's all I can manage. By next year, I have forgotten the previous rule of the previous year. That's why they say it takes 12 years to study grammar. No wonder. And so like this, there is a lot of, confusion. And the mind itself is so, the brain is tiny. And recently the scientists have said, first it was thought that the brain size and the intelligent quotient and the intelligence, the amount of intelligence and common sense capacities were correlated. And now they say that even animals and creatures with a pea-sized brain can have a lot of intelligence. So the brain size is, now we are finding out, is inconsequential. Because we see this after somebody's brain is incapacitated after stroke or something like that. You see that there are certain other areas that can be trained and to take over the functions. And so it's very, very interesting. So the brain size limited, the intelligence limited, and then the Shakti, strength limited, Jnana, knowledge therefore limited, and then what? Vairagya, extremely limited. And what else? Aishwarya, overlordship, the ability to rule over everything, very limited. The only thing that you rule over is the pet in the house, which is why people keep pets. You say rover come, and poor rover doesn't have an option. Its karma is to, just arrive when you call, so it wags its tail and comes. In fact, rover is the only one listening to you. No one else listens. That's the extent of your overlordship. Whereas Bhagavan, the whole Jagat, listens. Mrityur dhavati panchamaha. So first is, we have a very nice verse, mantra in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Panchamaha means the fifth one. What are the other four? Dhavati, runs. The fifth one, death, runs at whose behest? Bhishasmad vatah pavate, bhishodeti suryaha, bhishasmad agnischindrascha, mrityurdhavati panchama iti. Bhishat asmad vatah pavate. The air does not blow randomly. It is in keeping with some dictate, someone's dictate. And that dictate is out of the fear or respect of that dictate, blows. Suddenly the air, Vayu, gets a SMS from Bhagavan. Go to Oklahoma. That can only mean one thing. Yeah. Become a tornado. And that's why it's called hurricane, because it is sent by Lord Hari. Very clear. Very clear. Yeah. Go to Georgia, hurricane. Go to Florida, hurricane. So Vayu does not blow randomly. It is in keeping with a law and that law here rests in a conscious being. Bhishodeti suryaha, and the sun rises or the earth turns, causing the appearance of sunrise in response to the law. Suppose the earth says, I'm not going to turn, I'm sick of turning. So many centuries I've been turning, what did I accomplish? Nothing. I'm tired, I'm old, I'm going to stay put. Depending on where it stopped, neither India or America will be in permanent darkness, correct? Yeah, we'll have to borrow solar energy and we'll have to borrow that from other countries, and then there'll be fight over sunlight. You can imagine. The permanent darkness. In fact, they have discovered, I just wish that I didn't digress so much, but it's fun. And, they have discovered one Earth-like planet. It's called an exoplanet because it's outside of the solar system and it's only 4.5 light years away, which means that even if you sent reproducing people in a spaceship, hypothetically, the 4th generation would reach there. Based on the assumption that they would continue to be alive and continue to reproduce. 4th or 5th generation would make it to this sun called Proxima Centauri. Proxima meaning it is close by, supposedly. Yeah, it's all relative. When you talk of light years, don't say 4.5 light years is not 4.5 kilometers. Certainly not. Yeah. So, 1 light second is 186,000 miles. Okay? Yeah. And that 1 second, then that you multiply by 60, that is 1 light minute. And that you further multiply by 60, that is 1 light hour. That you multiply by what? 24, that is 1 light day. And that you multiply by 365, that is 1 light year. And that you multiply by 4.5, that is 4.5 light years away. And so then this planet, half of it is facing its sun and the other half is in perpetual darkness. So if the Earth supposedly did not shift, it would be like that planet orbiting the Proxima Centauri. So obviously that doesn't happen. There are certain things we can rely on, like the gravitational force, the strong force, the weak force, the electromagnetic force. These are all stuff of which physics is made. Physics we can rely on because these are all laws. We can study them. We rely on them because they are constant. And they are constant, not randomly so. It's not randomly that all the molecules come together and form kidneys or brain or something like that. There is an intelligence there behind all these names and forms, including the 5 elements. And this has effects on my life. It affects me. It affects my body, mind, sense complex. And I have to learn to relate to it. I have to learn to relate to it. I have to learn to know it first of all. And you cannot know something without relating to it. So therefore, the second, definition of Brahman, Tatastha Lakshana, from the standpoint of this Jagat becomes very important because you cannot know any other Brahman other than Ishvara. No, but what about pure Brahman without all these attributes? That you have to wait for Pralaya. That's okay, never mind, I'll wait. If you wait for Pralaya, you will not be there. Instruction cannot take place. There will be no Guru, no Shishya. So you cannot, and no, it doesn't matter, I'll still be swimming in the goo of oneness, yes, but you will not be there to enjoy it. This is the whole thing. This is where people forget. People don't understand that this oneness goo, the primal oneness goo, which everybody wants, is not a possibility, because for the knowledge to take place, the last frontier of duality, which is Shastra, Shishya, Guru, Shishya, Shastra, all these things, or the devotee and Bhagavan, that has to be there. That has to be there. It's one of the other ironies or paradoxes of Vedanta, that this has to be there, and then only then the knowledge can take place. How can, otherwise who is the seeker? Who are you going to go to learn? You can't, because if the Guru is also becomes just goo, not yeah, then you are also Guru is also goo, then there is the ignorance continues. Oh, can ignorance survive Pralaya? Absolutely. Absolutely, because all the jivas incarnate happily ignorant in the next life cycle. In the next cycle of creation, the ignorance is intact. It has not gone any change. So forget about swimming in the primal goo. Wake up and smell the Jagat, because the Jagat is here to stay, and it's a thorn on the side. The Jagat immediately converts itself into samsara for the samsari. The samsari is the one who has a subjective outlook. Subjective outlook means not seeing everything as Ishvara, not understanding and accepting what is. What is this Ishvara is the teaching of Vedanta. So unless one sees that, then one is not able to understand this and enjoy this. And so that becomes a deterring factor really to this knowledge. So I have to first see that I, as in the master of this body, mind, sense complex, the Ahankara, the one who is running the show, so to speak, of the body, mind, sense complex, is not really running the show. I have to see that. I have to see that someone else is in charge, and I have to learn to hitch my wagon to that someone else and say, you are the driver. This is what Arjuna had to do. Hand over the reins to Lord Krishna. These are all very symbolic. And sit back, relax, and be driven in the chariot. Before that, he was driven insane by his own kartrutvam, by his own doership. And now that he let go of the reins, he could relax. Because every arrow had to pass through the Lord before it hit him. He was already protected. He was safe. And so that connection has to be understood. For that, the Shraddha has to be there. And Shraddha is nothing but bhakti. That bhakti is there towards Bhagavan, towards Shastra, towards Guru, towards the Veda, everything. And in that bhakti fructifies into knowledge. Eventually, Kramena, he's going to say that, with the help of the Shastra. But without bhakti, there is no mukti. This is what the whole thing is. And so, for the skeptic who says, I just want to continue swimming in the goo and I don't want, I have Ishvara allergy. Yeah, Ishvara allergy. And so now it's too bad, you can't even buy that pen, which is anti-allergy pen. They have, apparently it has become very costly. Anti-allergy something, injection you can't buy. So, if you have Ishvara allergy, it is very difficult to resolve it. All the rashes that come out has to be resolved. And so, Narahari is helping out by giving a balm to the skeptic in the next two verses, because as soon as you say Shiva, Vishnu, if you start having rashes, so much so that you can't even listen, the poor Jignasu is left adrift. And so Narahari takes pity and says, let us look at it logically. Forget Ishvara. Let's look at it logically. And gives a very interesting example of how to relate to Ishvara without calling it Ishvara. We'll call it something else safe and something that everyone can relate to. Let us see. So this is for the skeptic. This is for the inner child, and of course it appropriately starts with Balaha. Balakasta tata teti.
Balakasta tata teti.
Janakam pratibhashate.
Janakam pratibhashate.
Na punastata shabdatham.
Na punastata shabdatham.
Satu janati kinchana.
Satu janati kinchana.
So he says, Narahari says, the author says, imagine a child, balakaha, kutsitarte kap pratyaya. He could have just said balaha, but he says balakaha. Why? Because one can argue so that it will fit into the meter. That's a good argument. But these things are not accidental. So the ka at the end means it's like a, kutsitarte, how to translate that, it's more like a dismissive, diminutive. So balakaha, it's a diminutive version of a child. So the inner child basically here. So the balakaha, a diminutive, a child that is not to be taken seriously, a baby. And so what does the baby do? Tata tata iti. Tata means father. So if the child will say appa appa, daddy daddy, it will keep on saying. But does it know what father means? Not at all. Tata tata iti pratibhashate. It just responds. Bhashate, talks. Pratibhashate, talks in response, because the father says, call me father. Can you say daddy? And the child obligingly says, daddy. Appa, whatever it is, Papa, whatever it is, the child says, okay? Janakam pratibhashate. So in response to the father's query, can you say daddy? The child says daddy, because the child wants to please the father, and the child just knows that, okay? But it doesn't know what is the word daddy. Does it know the meaning of daddy? No, it doesn't know the meaning of daddy. It's just repeating, daddy, daddy. It's just repeating that in response to the request of the father. And then what? Na punaha, then again, tata shabdartham satu janati kinchana. It doesn't know, this balaka doesn't know the meaning of the word father, doesn't know what it means to be a father, doesn't know that it's a big responsibility, and doesn't know that, okay, once you have a child, you have to do all these things. It has no idea. What this relationship is also it doesn't know. It just keeps on blabbering, daddy, daddy, daddy. That's all it is. Now you know where he is heading. Replace daddy with Vishnu, Vishnu, Vishnu. In the beginning, the devotee, childlike devotee, just calls out without understanding the truth. And that's what he's going to say in the next verse. Yada tata padarthasya vyutpattim yatyasau kramat tada tu satyamevayam tata ityeti nischayam. Yeah, so first it is just blabbering, babbling, daddy, 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 and then what? Without understanding the purport of the words that it has just uttered in response to the father or towards the father. It just knows that this individual looking like this, of this particular height, is to be called daddy. That's all it knows. It doesn't know anything else. So, yada, when what? Tata shabdasya vyutpattim yati asau kramat. Kramat means slowly, slowly, as the years go by, and then the child, tata shabdasya vyutpattim, understands the truth of the word father. Okay? As the child grows up, and then let's say the child is in a certain kind of a danger, and then the father immediately lifts the child up. Little later on, oh, okay, father means, protection, father means this, father means that, different aspects of what, father means. Here we are talking of functional father, okay? We are not a dysfunctional father. Yeah. So we are talking of a functional father that's fit to be called a father, someone who provides and someone who protects. This is what, is someone who desires the hita, the benefit of the child. This is the one that is indicated. So first it just blabbers, tata, tata, father, father, daddy, daddy, and then slowly, kramat, in time, gradually, the child understands what is the meaning of this word father. What does the word father really mean? So when the child understands that, tada satyameva ayam tata iti nischayam. So then he understands that, okay, the child understands, okay, this is indeed father. It's not just repeating the word father, it's understanding the nature of the father. And what is the nature of a functional father? Protective, the one who provides, the one who protects, the one who is loving, the one who is non-judgmental, the one who is compassionate. These two verses are brilliant, really, because he has hit at the heart of the problem here, which is really what? Authority issue, which is why Ishvara allergy starts to take place. More about that after the break. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Small break, then we will be